Man, I am tired. Um, so since I can't shut my brain off, I might as well make a video. I'm supposed to be resting, right? But I guess this is my form of rest because I can't rest until I sort out some things in my own mind, and I might as well think out loud. So I don't know if you all saw the video that I put in my community tab of the why Hindus are successful. And it's this white doctor guy. He's probably a doctor in sociology. But he talks about Hindus being successful in the UK, right? Now, what I find funny is I'm like, okay, well, what's the difference between Hindus and Pakistanis, right? Because I already know that Pakistanis in India, in the UK, a lot of people associate them with the trafficking of heroin. A lot of them are in the prison industrial complex in the UK. I don't even know if they would that's even an appropriate term, but I'm saying you'll see a lot of Pakistanis with criminal histories in the UK. However, when you come to the United States, you don't see that. Pakistanis are right up there with the Hindus in terms of businesses that they control and operate, and educational obtainment. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but you're not going to see any Pakistanis that are going to be in prison. But in the UK, you will see that. And I'm like, well, Pakistan and India at one point were one country, very similar, cultures, only difference being largely the religion, right? But I'm like, going with this guy's, what he's saying and the ideas that he has about the Hindu community. I'm like, well, why is it so starkly different between, let's say, the Pakistanis in the UK versus the Pakistanis in the US, right? I think that there is a discrepancy in treatment. All right, but that always gets ignored. And this is one of the reasons why I don't like entertaining. I take it with a grain of salt when white people start going down, the eugenic path and start talking about IQs and start talking about, genes and how intelligence is passed on. But I'm saying I'm entertaining it for, the purposes of this video. Okay, so he brought up how Hindus have, this sort of, caste system. Right. And let me back up a bit because I want to bring this other point up, the other issue that I have with white people, going into the little bell curve shit. Right. Because I feel that even in arguments as African American, when you're talking to, white people that really want to push this sort of bell curve idea, they'll be quick to tell African Americans or any black person that files grievances with the system of white supremacy. They'll tell any African American that, oh, well, look at the Asians. The Asians are just doing so well. And, they're this and they're that. And they're so smart and they're smarter than we are, blah, 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 blah. But, it's like, I happen to notice that there's very few Asians in leadership position, right? Despite all that you're saying about how they're so smart and all this other stuff. And again, if America was a meritocracy, then Asians should be running America. Right. But that's not what we see. We see white people running America. Not to say that they won't let Asians work for them. But again, if it's all about intelligence, if it's all about IQ, then why aren't Asians running? Oh, well, and then they dive into some Asian stereotype. Oh, well, Asians, they don't assert themselves. They're not assertive. They're not masculine, rolling into all these stereotypes of Asian men not being masculine, therefore by Western standards, therefore not being assertive. Right. And therefore, not being able to function in a leadership capacity. So, yet again, the white man, I must be the leader because, Asians, despite all of their brilliance, they just don't have what it takes, for true, leadership. Right. So that's what they throw up. Right. Again, the whole emasculation of the Asian male, when I'm like, aren't these the guys that came from, the samurai and, kung fu masters and all that stuff, whipping people's asses all over the place, You know what I mean? I mean, I don't even know how you can have martial arts movies and simultaneously say Asian men are not masculine. I know that's only one stereotype, but I'm just saying, like, you go back and you look at those motifs and artworks that you see coming out of Japan and all the decapitated heads. I'm like, where is the femininity in that? You know what I'm saying? So, the whole emasculation of the Asian man, is a modern phenomenon. All this stuff that you see with K-pop and whatnot. So, again, you got to take what white folks say with a grain of salt. Because they want to be able to intellectualize, everything that's always going to essentially place themselves at the top, even when they acknowledge they're not the most intelligent. Oh, well, we have these other redeemable qualities over here, and that's why we get to run shit. Right? Hashtag white people logic. But anyway, so he brought up the point about Hindus and, how they have this caste system. Right. And what this video did for me was reinforce what I already knew. Okay, now the caste system in India is basically you have the Brahmins at the top and you have the untouchables, which aren't even a part of Brahman's body. The untouchables that are, essentially outside the caste system. They're at the lowest rung of the caste system. And what he was saying is that the way that the caste system is set up in India, which I think he said it didn't even exist something like 1400 years ago or something like that, but it came to be, is that it basically forced pockets of artificial selection where only people, not only that, it reinforced patriarchy, which, a woman could marry up, but a woman could marry up, a man could marry down, but a man could not marry up. I'm like, well, that's quintessential, patriarchy, right? You cannot, marry into a situation where, the woman's got more than what you got going on. So it low key maintains the system of patriarchy, or low key or high key, however you want to interpret it. But he brought up the eugenic aspect, which is, well, you had all these Brahmins. They were the only people within a particular caste system can get with each other. So the low IQ people who were at the bottom, they stayed at the bottom, and the high IQ people, they stayed at the top, right? And so they were able to genetically enhance themselves. Again, going back to the warlock from, the 2000 time machine, that's their role here. Right? They're the untouchables. That's their role here. We are, the intellectually superior ones, and we have a long lineage of superior individuals. As the warlock said in the time machine, we selected for our intellect. Right? I don't know if you all have ever seen the movie, but that's the ultimate form of, this sort of not just intellectual hierarchy, but a racial, hierarchy, or an intellectual hierarchy that's justified on the basis of race. Right. And so as I was watching the clip and he talked about, the Brahmins getting with the Brahmins and that facilitating high IQs, genetically speaking, amongst the upper echelon of Indian society, and therefore they're controlling all the wealth and all that stuff, right? I started thinking about how the black community would reject that, especially now, and this ties into a lot of the arguments that I ended up having about nappy-headed jojoba and, for Harriet, who see slavery as the great equalizer. And essentially slavery for African Americans was the great equalizer. Or you could say anybody of the black diaspora that was, participated in slavery, whether it's Afro-Brazilians or, Afro-Colombians or Afro, Caribbean blacks or whatever. Slavery was the great equalizer. Not just internally, when it comes to the hierarchies, but also across gender lines. That's what the feminists will argue, that slavery was the great equalizer. And so, African Americans and many other Caribbean blacks, but I'd say African Americans more specifically, have a very unique situation, right? Their language was taken from them, their culture was taken from them, and their hierarchies were taken from them. They were destroyed. Where, other groups have largely gone, undisrupted. And I'm saying, this other phone, hold on a second. I was sitting and lost my train of thought. That these hierarchies were removed from us. And I'm saying you have other groups that, like Nigerians, for example, that's black population, right? They have high, PhD obtainment in America, right? But they also, I would say, are a group that maintains its social hierarchies, right? Highly educated Nigerians link up and marry other highly educated Nigerians. Now, I guess this could be said for pretty much all communities, but it's like, okay, so to what degree do they operate? And especially in relationship to African Americans, African Americans, I dare say, feel like that shouldn't exist. We've had this conversation numerous times about how people feel that class should not exist in the black community because all class does, or any sort of hierarchy does, is imitate the system of the oppressor, imitate the system of white supremacy. So there's this wholesale rejection of all hierarchies, all structures that even remotely look like, because the argument would be that, like the caste system with the Brahmins and the untouchables in the Indian community, that white supremacy essentially acts the same way in its relationship and orientation to African Americans or black people in general, or the global system of white supremacy in general, that they are the Brahmins, they're at the top as white people, and then black people are on the floor and we're the untouchables, right? And so there's a lot of black people, they reject all forms of hierarchies, because any hierarchy they can, in their mind, make a direct link to the system of white supremacy. Sometimes it's in their mind. Sometimes it's just the reality that white people, essentially, especially as black people being a minority in America, there's pretty much nothing that you can touch or have access to that isn't connected to the white infrastructure. This presents a profound issue for black people in establishing, any sort of hierarchy. There's black people who look at it from the standpoint of, well, how is this black person going to say that they're any better than me? Especially when the basis of them being better is tied to the white infrastructure and the white hierarchy, which, again, if white people oppressed us, then white people established this hierarchy where they tried to say that they were just innately better and superior to us, then how is it that a black person can then go off and use that same system to try to elevate themselves over other black people? It doesn't make sense, right? This is where you get into the rhetoric about, black people being, uppity and bougie, or being Oreos, or acting like they're white, or thinking that they're white. And so this presents a very complex and unique issue in terms of establishing, hierarchies, for black people. It creates a serious, a serious problem for us, in trying to rectify and fix, much of the problems, especially when you're talking about going into the inner city and dealing with, the people that arguably, come from the bottom, right? Based on the idea that they don't have resources. As I've said before, if you have a group of people, and you leave them in a situation for a prolonged period of time, prolonged exposure to poverty, and they don't have access to capital, they don't have access to resources, they don't have access to any of the things that define you as a person, and they're that define your success as a person in this society, in this capitalist society, and they don't have any real viable access or way to get to it, then sooner or later people are going to reject the idea of that as a standard. Why are they going to hold themselves to a standard based on something that they don't have access to, based on something that comes from the dominant society and the system of white supremacy and the oppression of black people? No, they reject it wholesale. And again, in that power vacuum, that is created, in the black community due to prolonged exposure to poverty, because, again, even the black people who do succeed within the system, they're rejected because they're, a part of the system. That's how it's seen. And they're a part of that hierarchy that was never designed nor created for or by black people. And so, essentially in these communities and these neighborhoods and these environments, there's a power vacuum. Because the one thing that really sets black people who would be the elite class in the black community apart from other communities is they have no power. They don't control the economic landscape. Where in other communities, you go to the India and you look at the Brahmins who are at the top of the caste system, they control, substantial and vast amounts of wealth. And the untouchables have nothing. And if they want economic opportunities, they have to go to those Brahmins. Now, the other issue is, and you'll see this with other groups, because I've seen this as well, like other groups, other minority groups, when they're in America, if they find themselves in that, lower rung or lower tier within their own respective group, they also begin to reject that group in that structure, and then they start looking at other communities. They start swirling, they start interracially dating and going out, because nobody is going to just simply accept their lot in life and just say, oh well, I ain't shit, and that's all there is to it. They're going to reject that. Okay, it's the same way that you'll have let's say a white woman, and she's a little bit too thick for your average white guy, but in the black community, she's just right. She's going to go where she's celebrated, not, tolerated, right? That's where she's going to go. Same thing could be said about a black woman who feels that she's too skinny, and black men aren't paying attention to her because she don't have a whole bunch of ass. But white men, they love skinny, black women. And so she goes over there, like the Jazz McKendricks and whatnot, and so she's over there, getting all the attention. That's what people are going to do if they have the ability to do it. Okay. And so, you'll see that. I mean, you see that with populations like the Guyanese, like they're already removed, from the Indian population. They don't even speak Hindi, right? They're already removed. And then, you have them in America. And so they operate in a very similar fashion to African Americans in terms of, their orientation, all of that, the ideas of the prestige and the hierarchies and all that they don't have access to. And the fact that they already came from the lower rungs of Indian society when they were coaxed into basically slave labor. Because if you really, if you look up the history of Guyana, the Indians that that the British brought to Guyana, they tricked them into going over there. They tricked them much of the same way that they tricked the Pakistanis into going into Dubai, and then when they get there, they take their passport and all that other stuff. So they got done dirty. But the situation in India must have been that bad. But anyway, I'm saying that how do you get, and this also ties into the inferiority complex that black people have, of themselves, that was induced upon them, where how do you get an ex-slave to work for an ex-slave? That whole aspect of, oh man, you ain't no better than me, that always seems to come up when you start talking about establishing any sort of hierarchy. Now, in the black community, because slavery was the great equalizer, the hierarchies should be based on, a meritocracy. It should be based on, what your skill set is, what your knowledge level is. That's what it should be based on. But the problem is that, unfortunately, the centralized bases of the black community, when you used to have educated people who actually lived in the black community as opposed to moving out, post desegregation, they no longer live in the community. And so a lot of the people in the community cannot make a direct connection to, highly educated black people's educational attainment or occupational position and how much money they're making, and connect it to anything benefiting them or benefiting the community as a whole. And so there's no reason to respect a professional, educated black person, because at the end of the day, they don't even live in the community. They don't live in the community. They don't break bread. They're not putting anybody on. They're not handing out or dishing out economic opportunities. So at the end of the day, their attitude is, nigga, fuck what you think. Seriously, fuck what you think. You don't be coming in here with your bougie ass Eurocentric oriented standards and shit like that nobody can live up to because we don't have access to capital and whatnot, and all that shaming. The same thing that I talked about when that open letter to LeBron James, when we all know it's about resources. Again, people do not want to be defined by what they don't have access to. That's just one element. That's one element. And I do think that much of that problem could be fixed if there was more access to, economic resources to be able to define yourself as a man in the traditional classic capitalist American westernized American dream sense. But the other aspect, the other issue is the whole looking at it from the standpoint that all of this is Eurocentric, all of this is white. And then this goes back to the, nappy-headed jojoba and, for Harriet talking points. You know what I mean? Well, who says, because again, the idea is white people said that they were better than black people and black people reject that. So that's a hierarchy. And therefore, all hierarchies, all structures are connected to or seen as originating from the idea and concept of the system of white supremacy, of just being intrinsically better. And then this is where it goes into Stupidville, where it's like, well, who says that a two-parent home is better than a single-parent home? Who says that this physically fit woman is better than this morbidly obese woman? Who says that a childless woman is better than a single mother? Who says that a man with money is better than a man without money? Who says that a man, without a felony is better than a man with a felony? Who says, and you could just go on and on ad nauseum. And I'm saying this also, and see what really frustrates a lot of women, in particular on this front. And there's also men that get frustrated, by this, especially when you start talking about money. You've seen the comments, you know what I mean, that dudes jumping up and, man, it ain't about the money. They start going crazy because they do not want to be defined by something that they don't have access to, because then that means that what? They're in that lower rung and nobody wants to be there. Okay. What was I going to say about see this with the women? Because, there are, the way that discrimination is everywhere. Like the way that people choose their partners is discriminatory. I want this woman. I don't want that woman. Or I want a woman that looks like this, but I don't want a woman like that. It's discriminatory. This category over here is better than this category over there. Women who dress like this are better than women who dress like that. Right. So this idea of eliminating, the sort of discriminatory, individual choice out of the world is nonsense. But that's what, a lot of the social justice warriors try to do. They want to eliminate, all choice. It's like what I say about, when women isn't she deserving of love? Isn't she deserving? Single mothers are deserving of relationships and this, that, and the third. And I say, I'm like, yeah. But you're ignoring at the expense of the childless man. You're ignoring, again, it's all at the expense of somebody else having to put up with that situation. And they don't like the fact that anybody is making the personal. Just simply saying I choose door A over door B means that door B, it feels discriminated against. That's extreme. That's just stupid in my opinion. But this is how extreme many of the social justice warriors, try, to take this, this whole, connecting everything to the system of white supremacy, every hierarchy, every structure. Even if black people try to establish it, they'll swear up and down that it's just a mirror reflection of the system of white supremacy, and black people, trying to, this minority of people try to make themselves feel better than another group. See, this is why you have to actually have power in order to set up a hierarchy. You cannot just simply, state it based on, what another group, another society that you're participating in. You have to have your own in order for people to really respect it. Okay, this is why, a lot of the stuff that you see going on in the streets, is, respected because, it's set up by the individuals of that environment. Now, the problem with black culture when you want to talk about what's going on in the streets is the fact that it's like religion. It's flexible. People don't have any responsibilities or obligated to one another. It always allows people to wiggle themselves out of, a position or a role or a duty or a responsibility. Um, and everything is loosely tailored together. So, again, you're talking about a population of people that lacks resources. So nothing can be rigid. And then you have the people, and I've always talked about this. If you fix the black community, a lot of the cultural elements would die. Okay, from based on an intact community, like people like, oh man, I love gangster ciphers, and I don't know if you ever saw the video where it was like hip hop battle translated. It was this white guy. He did this video, and he was. I mean, it's hilarious, but at the same time, it's very truthful. Where he's translating, and he sounds like he's reading a textbook, from Oxford University or something like that, and it sounds like this late 1800, type of, speech pattern and talking points. But he goes to talk about how, they're basically challenging each other and rapping about which one grew up, in a more deprived or more depraved situation. And you have black people who, it's like Mekhi Phifer's character in Paid in Full. Man, I love the game. You know what I'm saying? I love the streets. I love hip hop. I love, just the whole way the hood operates, and this is the realest motherfucker out, and this, that, and they love all that, right? But again, we all know the cost that comes along with that, which is, the murder, the crime, all that stuff, the lawlessness. All right, the fact that you really can't hold anybody to any amount of accountability because again, the whole street culture has enough malleability, enough flexibility. It's nebulous in its form that anybody who does some foul shit can somehow wiggle their way out of it, flip it, turn it around on you, say that it's because, you did it. In other words, it would be like trying to hold Grandmaster Jay accountable. Like what you see with Grandmaster Jay and the way that he cannot acknowledge that he was completely wrong. He in his his firearms training and the fact that he's clearly bragging about his exaggerating about his military experience and all that. That Grandmaster Jay is the epitome of the type of personality that you deal with a lot of times when trying to correct things that exist in the hood. Okay. There's no way to hold anybody accountable. They will quickly use mental gymnastics to get around or get out of, any situation that you're trying to address. And it's one of the reasons why a lot of ELs and other highly intelligent people, choose not to deal with, the innocent, because it's a lose-lose situation, right? Oh, nigga, you ain't no better than me. Again, you're in there trying to help the situation. Oh man, don't be trying to come in here and help. Yeah, we'll take your help, but don't be trying to come in here acting like you better than somebody. Right? Or they'll have the attitude like, yeah, nigga, like this is what your lame ass is supposed to do. Right? Or the aspect of trying to, just coming through and trying to use people for their resources. Right? Which again, once the people realize that that's all you're doing, you're not really respecting what they're doing, they're going to stop doing what they're doing. And there's multiple aspects of it. You know what I mean? The idea that, well, at the end of the day, you're still connected to the white infrastructure and therefore we don't have any respect for you because, we out here in these streets and, nigga, we live it, all that stuff. So how do you go in there and correct that? Right. Even like, I remember Cap told me this, a long time ago in relationship to even when it comes to dating single mothers. You know what I mean? If you come in there and you're dating a woman and let's say she's an irresponsible single mother, because remember Captain Solo dated a woman that had 3 kids, okay? 3 kids that he did not create, okay? And he linked up with her and got with her, and there were reasons. Cap acknowledges his own insecurities about stuff like that, and again, listening too much to his mother about the idea that the only reason this existed is because some man failed somewhere. Okay, and you know one of the worst things about dating single mothers is if they ever pick up on the idea that you think that you're better than them or that you're in a better position than they are. You'll have women and men who, if you're messing with them and you come off like you're better than them, they will try to either get pregnant or try to get you pregnant. If it's a guy doing it to a woman. They just to bring you down to their level. They will do shit like that. You know what I mean? And there's situations that, just the way you move, just the way you operate, if you're a, single childless person, which will leave them feeling some type of way, especially when, they actually have the kids are biologically theirs, and you're actually doing more responsible things for the kids than they do. When you're talking about, putting the kids on your health care or something like that, or you're talking about making sure that they have what they need, in terms of school and stuff, you start acting and operating as a better parent than the biological parent. And the person will grow to resent you for that, because not because you did anything particularly wrong, not because you said anything that was condescending, but the mere fact that what you're doing makes them feel some type of way and being self-reflected. And because they don't like the way that watching you do or handle responsibility makes them feel, they're going to resent you. You see? And so, that's why, that's another one of the reasons why I say that, people need to deal with people that are equal, that they're equally yoked to, because that's the only true way that you can eliminate those sort of animosities, and I mean, that's just what it is. I hate to, say it sometimes, and because what white people do is they try to act like, this absolves the system of white supremacy and everything that the white supremacists have done, to the black community. They have a responsibility and obligation, to black people, especially the way that they like to sit up there and claim that they're the moral compass of the universe. Like I say all the time, I'm not going to allow white people to do that. If they want to sit there and they want to say, oh, well, we're intellectually superior, and they say, yeah, and your intellect is only matched by your savagery. You're not going to get around me with this idea that, white people are morally superior, and that, they're intellectually superior, but then not take the sin and the savagery that comes along with it, which is what they continuously try to do. Right? They want to sit there and again, what would have been some impressive shit is if Europeans just simply stayed in Europe, had all the technological advancements in the world and everything that has led up to the 21st century, Europeans, discovered and created all in Europe. That would be amazing, but that's not what happened. They had to go out there, conquer some lands, conquer some people, get a whole bunch of free labor, vacuum all the wealth and resources into, America, and use, those resources, and free time in order to sit around and pontificate about, the universe and things like that. Because if you really look at it, most of the inventions, are not European. Most of the inventions, of the real, technologically, bringing us into the future, they're American inventions. And so, what this man is saying, this, doctor of sociology or whatever he is, about the caste system and how that created, these super intellectual Indians and everything, which is essentially what, the German guy with the mustache was trying to do. You can't say his name on YouTube because, I don't know, the algorithms go crazy and whatnot. But, the funny guy with the mustache, he was essentially trying to do the same thing. Right. But I asked the question, I'm like, OK, well, how come Europeans aren't the ones that came up with the light bulb and, aviation and how to fly and the television and the cathode ray tube and the locomotive and the automobile? How come all of these are American inventions? Right? If notice how you have, all the other Europeans that don't have anything to do with that trying to take credit for it. Most of the European, quote unquote inventions were, when you want to talk about like specific countries in Europe, they were chemistry, like a lot of the German chemist, right? And not only that, most of the engineering, and I'd say argue that most of the if you want to talk about an ethnic group within Europe, came from the Germans, right? Or came out of war and conflict. That's where much of your technological advancements come from. They come from war and conflict. Look at Wernher von Braun with the V2 rocket and whatnot. And then what did the United States do? They incorporated Wernher von Braun and they incorporated, Albert Einstein. They brought them into America. And, next thing you know, they got thermonuclear weapons and they got a space program. You see, but America, what did America essentially do? Eliminate there's the hierarchies, right? Because then that allows you to tap into, again, the idea is that it becomes more of a meritocracy, and it allows you to tap into, populations of intelligence that, are able to, that are now, able to be tapped into more readily. Right. This is the whole idea behind, what was it? Is that Elon Musk, with the Skynet or whatever it is, Starnet, with the whole, the global internet, circumventing the telecommunications companies and stuff like that, giving remote regions of the world access to the internet. There might be some child, in the third world country in, a village somewhere who might be the next Albert Einstein. You never know. But these sort of pervasive ideas of that there's this IQ and bell curves and that that this group of people they're just condemned to be relegated at the bottom. See, that's the arrogance of the elite a lot of times. Like, I can acknowledge that there's a lot of shit. Like, look, people can say what they want. It takes a high amount of intelligence to be a drug dealer, a successful drug dealer. I have seen the kids that excel and fail every class except for math. Every class they fail except for math. And then they take those math skills and then they go out there and they're a successful drug dealer. But they can't read, write, or write a resume, whatever you want to call it. They can't do that if their life depended on them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look at Rick Ross, right? Freeway Rick Ross. The man couldn't read. When he was selling drugs and doing all the stuff, he couldn't read. But yet, he's getting paid whatever it was, $1 million a day, $2 million a day. So there are, different levels of intelligence, not just, there's this sort of conventional idea of intelligence, which ironically corporations are leaving because now they don't want people with high IQ. They want people with, high EQ, because the people with high IQ tend to be socially awkward. Right. And they don't have, what it takes to lead a team. They don't understand how to deal and interact with people with multiple personalities and get them to coordinate and function as a cohesive unit, and be able to identify, the skill sets, of each person. You know what I'm saying? Like the person, like if I'm going to make a basketball team, okay, who's the best dribbler? Okay, he's going to be my point guard. Who's the tallest guy? Okay, he's going to be my center. Okay. Who are the guys that are a little bit more balanced? They can shoot and they can dribble. Okay, they're going to be my forward. Okay, those are my forwards. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is how you orient the whole thing. And it does take a different level of personality to operate like that. But at the end of the day, society does, have structure to it. And there are, hierarchies to it. I mean, there's a naturally, I don't want to call it naturally born hierarchy when you look at, the idea that young people are supposed to look up to their elders. because the elders have lived longer, they have more experience, right? They teach you things. It's not like we come into the world and we just know how to function. You know what I mean? I mean, every your whole childhood growing up, that first, I don't know, 10, 15 years everything is new. Everything is a new experience. Oh shit, I didn't even know that. And then you factor on the internet and everything else like that. I'm saying this is how, communities and societies are supposed to function. But now we've entered, this I don't even know what you want to call the world now. It just seems like in Western society is like Cortana in the Halo universe with rampancy. It's like Western society is thinking itself to death, to where everything begins to be questioned. And don't get me wrong, there's times to push back the envelope and question things. I don't discourage anybody from questioning things. But when people start saying, all this is wrong and all this needs to change and this, that, and the third, and they start presenting these models that haven't even been tested, they haven't even run the simulations. They just simply say, this is oppressive, or this looks too much like this, and we need to reject this and this, that, and the third. And it's like when I hear the feminists sit there and talk, and, they start talking about how, it starts looking like men are just supposed to be chattel labor, and then women, claim themselves to be the intellectual class. Well, women can multitask, and that's why women are better at this, and women are better at that, and that's why we should run things, and you should just go out to work and just come home and hand us a check. I'm like, what's so funny about that is then they start looking like the very system that they claim that they're trying to reject. Right? The oppressed become the oppressors. Right. So, I just think that's, it's very interesting, but I think people, they take things and they run too far with it. And right now you see the battle and the struggle, especially when we talk about gender in the black community, between, the hypergamous camp, versus the social justice warrior camp of eliminating all hierarchies and eliminating patriarchy and eliminating anything that remotely looks like, the system of white supremacy that is a hierarchy that said that we are better than you, and that justifies slavery. And so how could a black person possibly subscribe to such an evil structure, right? How could you then go out there and say that you're better than this and you're better than that, da 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 da? But by the same token, there's a definite problem with equalizing everything to the point that you can't even separate out the doers from the non-doers, or the hard workers from the lazy people, or the intelligent people from the people who are not so intelligent. I'm not saying that the less intelligent people should just be, cast into the fire. Again, that's why I'm always talking about livable wages and all this other stuff. I'm like, and again, the elite people have always, the rulers of society, which black people essentially haven't been a part of that conversation. But when you look at these sort of these secret societies, these secret groups, Skull and Bones, Illuminati, freaking the Trilateral Group, the Bilderberg Group. These are intelligent people who surround themselves with other intelligent people. You know what I'm saying? Like when you look at, the Rockefeller and Carnegie, and when they went to whatever that secret island that they went to have a meeting about how shit is going to go down, they didn't bring Ishmael, into the room, from Titanic. If it's the captain of the ship and it's Sir Andrews and they're having a meeting about the Titanic going down, they don't want Ishmael in the room. When can we get underway? Damn it. She's made of iron, sir. I can assure you. She can and she will. When Ishmael, brought up the point about this ship can't sink. The way that Sir Andrews responded, she's made of iron, sir. She can and she will. It is a mathematical certainty. That is an intelligent response. Same with the Apollo 13, scene, where John was like, power is everything. We got to bring them down to 12 amps. You can't run a vacuum cleaner on 12 amps, John. Power is everything. Without power, they can't communicate with us. They can't turn around their heat shields. They can't change their trajectory. Power is everything. You see, intelligent people are problem solvers. They can, they can't shut their brain off. One of my issues. Okay, they're constantly thinking about shit. They sift out, the bullshit. They chew the meat and spit out the bones. Okay, people who are less intelligent, overly emotional, and I don't like to use the word less intelligent, but it's a fact of life, and I don't want to come off myself or self-categorize myself and say I'll put myself in I'm intelligent, I'm just going to speak on it, and all these peasants, I'm not trying to come off like that, but it's a fact of life. This is why sometimes I look at it's not like I don't like how white supremacy tries to deflect away from the evils and the shit that white supremacy has done. And again, trying to claim themselves to be the benevolent person. But I do recognize that, a lot of the inequalities in the world, there is an innate level of inequality that is going to exist based off of different intelligence levels and based off of people making different decisions. Okay, I've already said and I've already recognized that as a rule, smart people are going to conspire against poor people. Okay, or smart people are going to conspire against those that have left, or smart people are going to conspire to have more in order to make themselves wealthy relative to everybody else. They're going to do that. Class warfare is going to be a global constant. It is always going to be a constant, which is why you have a lot of these people out here who want to tear down the system and be on some Fight Club type shit. But there's always going to be, those sort of hierarchies, because smart people don't want to be subject to, the idiots. Which is why you see, in America where, wealthier people who have professional degrees and higher education, they think about it. Like, why are they willing to pay more for a more prestigious environment? Because they're trying to price out what they consider the riffraff. In other words, if you are wealthy enough to live here, then you must be intelligent, because, you know how to work and operate within the confines of the system and get things to work for you. All the other people, they haven't figured it out yet. That's how they look at it, right? Completely ignoring, the sort of things that, the wealthy people or the intellectually elite people or whatever will do to conspire to make sure that they maintain power. They want to sit there. They want to say it's all about intelligence, but they're out there actively doing things to fuck people over so that they maintain power. So I'm like, how can people sit there and allow them to claim benevolence? Nothing that they're doing is benevolent. It's beneficial for them, but it's not beneficial for everybody else. And then to sit there and look somebody in the face and say, oh, well, it's because you're less intelligent. It goes back to what, Muhammad Ali said. What I'm saying? You're going to come through, break my legs, and then call me a cripple. You know what I mean? And then tell me how, I can't run in the race because, look at you. You're crippled. It's like, motherfucker, you the one that broke my legs. And then you get into the other people who take it a step further and they're like, well, if you were intelligent, then you would recognize when I came to break your legs and you would have done something to circumvent that. Right? Moo ha 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 ha. Right? And there's white people that look at the black community like that. Yeah, we came in there. Yeah, we fucked you up. Yeah, we did. We fucked you up. Okay, number one, what are you going to do about it? And then number two, why weren't you intelligent enough to circumvent it and dodge it and make sure it didn't happen? Clearly, the African leadership in Africa, when the European and the Portuguese first came there, they obviously weren't the sharpest, because all of the things that we did in order to, acquire African slaves and all the things that we did to exploit the continent, clearly they weren't clever enough to circumvent, right? And notice, like, when they're saying this, all of that, moral compass, benevolence, we walk in the light of Christ. All that shit goes to the wayside. Okay. When they're conquering, Jesus is not in the building. Okay. After they're done conquering, then they want to bring Jesus back into the building and tell you about how any retaliation against what they did against you is evil. Now, all of a sudden it's evil. Now they want to tell you about evils, right? When they was knocking over your head, it was survival of the fittest. That's their role here. But then after they, defeated you and they knocked you over the head and you sitting around with the bruise on your head and you're recouping in the hospital and everything, and you think you're sitting there angry and you ready to go back out there and fuck them up. Now that, again, they've already won. Now they're going to tell you about how immoral it would be for you to go in there and do unto them as they have done unto you. Right. Which is what you see white people doing now when they want to talk about, George Floyd and all the rioting and the protesting and the looting and all that other stuff. Right. Not saying that that's a viable solution. But what I'm saying is I most certainly understand where that sort of anger comes from and the whole attitude of not giving a fuck. You see, because once people realize the game, once people realize that you're really full of shit and you're not even consistent and you don't even hold yourselves to the same standards that you're trying to get everybody else to be held to, then that's when people say fuck it, and you've basically lost all ability for them to operate on these standards that you define but you claim are universal. You see, and that's what white folks, they love to do that shit. They love. It's mental gymnastics at its best, right? But like I'm saying, even internally within communities, like I said, if I had two black men, and one of them and they were both making $100,000, and one of them went off and had 8 kids, and the other one only had 1, right? Right off top, a situation of inequality has been created for future generations for that man that had 8 kids. Okay, that man that had 8 kids, all his kids are not going to get a car when they turn 16. The one who's making $100,000, and I'm just throwing that number out there, he only had 1 kid. He's going to be able to afford, an automobile at 16 for his son or his daughter or whatever. Right. And right from think about the situation of inequality that's going to create right from go, based off of the decision to have a screwed up kids to resource ratio and have more kids than you had the resources to take care of. The child of the one child of the man that only had 1 kid. OK, not only is he going to have a car in high school, but he's going to be able to date and attract all the girls that want to date the guy with the car. So he's going to be able to operate. He can ask his dad for money. Oh, Dad, I want to take this girl. She's beautiful. I want to take her to the movies. Oh, well, here, son. Here's my car. Take her to the movies. Whatever. Enjoy yourself. Have fun. Whatever. All that stuff. Allow them to do that. Because they can do that. But the father that had 8 kids, not only do his kids not get a car, but, he's going to be out there saying, looks like you're going to have to get a summer job. Da, da, da. So already the 8 kid, they got to do more than what the only child has to do. You see. And this is where people will, again, come up and try to make, with the kids that grew up with eight family members, they have a better understanding of what it is to share and work with other people. And, they start trying to, come up with all type of nuance, which, there may be some validity to that, but it's really designed as a coping mechanism to make them feel good about, a situation that definitely had its distinct disadvantages. You see. And so, this is why, it's like I hear the IQ argument, and I think that that's largely bullshit. Because like I said, when you talk about America, when you look at all the technological advancements that were made, I'm saying, hell, when you look at the people that get Nobel Prizes and stuff like that and whatnot that are American, there's all different type of ethnicities that are in there. And I'm saying, how many of those people came to America and were able to do in America what they could not have been able to do, in their own countries. So, in one aspect, I understand where people have a problem with these sort of fixed hierarchies that have no, upward mobility. You know what I'm saying? They're fixed, right? That stagnates progress, in my opinion, right? And in America, those hierarchies, I mean, I'd say the hierarchies are still there, but the ability to freely navigate, the sort of, where you got like, I don't know what you would call it, restrictions on free speech in other countries, restrictions on free ideas. America as a country, not as a white supremacist country, but America as an idea, distinctly different from the rest of how European was working. Because I keep having to remind people that, America is a new concept. When you look at when the classism is the first ism before racism, because in Europe you had kings, nobles, and peasants, and the vast majority of white people who left in Europe were in the peasant category. They were not in the aristocracy category. So what they did, that they came to America to establish themselves as an aristocracy, category. But America and Australia were both penal colonies. Okay, you did something wrong in England, you stole a loaf of bread, send him to America. No, not America, no, right? That's what they would do. And I'm saying, look at Australia, right? Again, this whole bell curve, concept idea. I'm like, Australia arguably came from the people that were from the lowest rung of British society, right? Because many of the descendants of the Australian peoples are the descendants of what would be considered, felons of the British Empire, right? Because it was a penal colony. You got sent all the way to Australia. And yet, look at Australia, leading world economy and all this other stuff, right? And I'm like, well, how did you get that out of a penal colony? How did you get that out of an island of prisoners? Explain that. Because this arguably, and I'm saying even based off of Europeans' own eugenic concepts, where that, criminals, their brains, all that pseudoscientific shit that they were doing with measuring skulls and all that crap. Oh, well, criminals, their frontal lobes are diminished and this, that, and the third. They were doing all type of stupid shit, right? And yet Australia is, what Australia is. And the irony is the same people that would say, well, criminals, they're the low IQ people of our society. Now they'll sit there and look at Australia and they'll be like, they'll pull Australia into, the concept of, no matter where Europeans go, Europeans, excel, and Europeans just do, amazing things. Right. I mean, they did the same thing with the Greeks and notice, America, Sacco and Vanzetti, right? America was very prejudicial towards Italians, Southern Europeans, all that stuff. But as soon as the man with the funny mustache discovered the greatness of Rome, he emulated his whole system off of, Greco-Roman orientation. That's what you see when you see those big ass, Colosseums and stuff, and where Hitler gave like his speeches and stuff like that. And they got Roman pillars all over the place, with his flags hanging down, looking like the Hellgast from freaking, what game is that? What game is that? What game is Killzone, Star Wars with Darth Vader and all that stuff. I mean, it's all based off of Greco-Roman orientation, right? But this is the Southern white people. You go further back into ancient times, it is the Southern European that has all of the knowledge, which ironically the Southern European got from the Northern African, right? Because Egypt preceded the Greco-Roman empires. So again, all that gets ignored. So I look at these eugenic attempts of, like this sort of shit that white people do is a way to try to justify their space. I mean, he even did it in the video. He was like, well, Pakistanis Hindus, they have the same IQ as Europeans. They have an average IQ of 100. And I'm like, Amazing how I'm like, you use yourself as the baseline. Amazing. You know, I mean, shit, listening to that video, I was like, man, I'd hate to see what he has to say about the African. Shit. You know? But the whole point of me making this video, you know, to get back to the core of the topic, is how black people and why black people reject hierarchies. Because it looks too much like the system of white supremacy that also, you know, oppressed us and also created this sort of artificial scale to say that, you know, we are just intrinsically better. And so because of that, any sort of hierarchy that black people try to come up with, any sort of, you know, this is better than that, is quickly, you know, rejected. Although, you know, people do still kind of operate on that to a degree. Like, people still will say, man, fuck what you saying. Like, if they like something, if they want something, if they think like this is better than this, and somebody tries to come in with some shame and shit, there are a lot of situations where black people be like, man, fuck all that. I ain't trying to hear that. But I'm saying at the collective level, trying to sell like what you see with the Indians, the idea that we're going to have a caste system and, you know, the smart people, you all are the best, and and you're going to get respect from the bottom, or you're going to get respect from the less intelligent people or whatever. I'm like, that is not going to happen in the black community. That sort of deference towards, you know, the elite. I mean, I heard that and I don't know if this is true or not, but the reason why Indians head bobble is because they took the whole shaking your head no out of, you know, their whole you know, conversation, right? Because, you know, you don't tell a person that's higher ranked than you no. So you head bobble. You give them an answer it's not a yes or a no. It's really a no, but it's really a no, but you're not shaking your head no. Now, I don't know how that shit, because they're the only people on the planet that do that. I don't know how that shit got incorporated, but I'm pretty sure it stems from that whole hierarchy aspect, that you don't tell somebody who's above you no. You come up with any excuse in the world, but no is not the answer that you give. So you head bobble, you know, as opposed to just saying no, because it went from being you know, you don't tell the person that's above you no, or you don't, what am I looking for? You don't tell the person that's above you no, because you don't want to, you know, offend them, or, you know, the idea that it's, you know, that it's just rude, that it has evolved into now. Or no, I should say, you don't tell the person that's above you no, because, you know, obviously that's a no, because who are you to tell them no? And then the whole offensive part. So let me clean that up. You know what I mean? I mean, just think about it. It's like the way that Xerxes was depicted in the movie 300, right? Just imagine you got this motherfucker, he walking down the stairs in gold and stepping on people's backs and shit, and you gotta tell Xerxes no? Are you going to tell Xerxes no? No, you probably going to sit there and bobble your head. You know, he's going to be like, well, where's this? Or what's that? Or I need an answer or whatever. You're going to be like, oh, well, you know, you know, you're going to be bobbling your head like a motherfucker. As opposed to saying no, where, you know, oh, you said no? Okay, cut his tongue out. You know, because, you know, again, rulers in ancient times, they had absolute authority. Absolute. If they wanted somebody executed right in front of them, it went down right in front of them. You know, so I don't know. You know, maybe that's what I heard that the bobblehead came from, but I'm not 100% certain. But it seems pretty legit to me. But anyway, I don't want to drag this video out any longer than it's already been dragged out. That's all I have to say. I'll put the link in the description box. Somebody remind me if I forget, because I tend to forget. But yeah, it's the video is why Hindus are successful, and it's Doctor something. He's in the UK, British accent and all that. But anyway, that's all I got to say. That's my video. SWP out.